Where were you when you heard about it?
Well, I was actually working at the BBC Good Food Show in Birmingham in the NEC, and I always sort of keep my phone. I was sort of hosting the thing, so I couldn't always look at my phone or whatever. And then I just went to look and just to see if there were any messages or texts or whatever, and I just pressed it, and it was a text from my father.
Yeah,
that said,
"Unbelievable.
Gary Speed has died."
Yeah,
and he must have written that text when it first broke, because then it was no explanation. He said, waiting for more information.
Yeah. And I got a phone call mid-morning yesterday from somebody who was a friend of Gary Speed, who told me the details that we all know now yesterday. It was so horrendous to take in. I was so stunned for about half an hour. I didn't know what to do with that information. It was such devastating information. I didn't want to tell anybody. I thought, no, this can't be true. Let's talk to somebody who will be immersed in the terrible grief surrounding this death, and that is Bobby Gould, the former Welsh manager, who's on the line with us now. Bobby, good evening to you.
Good evening, Mike.
Yeah, Bobby, thank you very much indeed for joining us. I've just introduced you as the former Welsh manager. Bobby, you're immersed in the football world, and what I really want to know is this: how is the football world coping with this enormous tragedy?
I think now everybody's just looking for answers, but I think it's still, Mike, a time for... Excuse me, I'll just have to move my cat.
Okay.
We'll have to... Everybody's looking for answers, but I think that we've just got to grieve and let people grieve for this moment, though, Mike, because it's still so sore.
Yeah.
It still hurts, and it still leaves you empty. And you walk about, and all of a sudden you start to think about the situation, and we just can't put the numbers together.
No, we can't. Where did you first hear about it, Bobby?
I was in the press room at Swansea. Prior to the game against Aston Villa.
Yeah.
I received a phone call from one of my ex backroom staff when I was manager of Wales, and they said, "Have you heard the news about Gary Speed?" And I just couldn't take it all in, to be perfectly honest. We weren't always the best of friends, but we stood up, we stood at corners, and he had his say and I had my say, and having made him the captain, that's what I encouraged him in the modern day footballer, to make sure they get their representations and the players' representations. And I just couldn't take it all on board. And I walked outside, and as I walked outside into the fresh air, big John Hartson was walking down with a bobble hat on, with a big smile on his face, and he just looked at me. He says, "What's up, Gouldy?" I says, "Have you heard the news about Gary?" And he said, "What's that?" I says, "Well, he's passed away." And he looked at me, and he just cried, and we just cuddled each other, Mike. We just cuddled and cuddled, and I was grateful to have somebody there to share it, to be perfectly honest.
Bobby, you managed him there at Wales. What made him such a special guy, such a special player? Because what's been incredible about this is he was a mentor to so many, not just as a player, but as a man, as a human being.
I took him on board as when I played Moldova. We won 1-0. He scored the goal from a dead ball situation, one that I'd taken with me from my days at Wimbledon, and it worked magnificently well, and he got up and headed the ball home. And then the next game we played Germany, we were playing at the old stadium, the Arms Park, and there was a great atmosphere against Germany, and all of a sudden he just came alive, and he has this ability within the game. Although he was never what we would class a great player, he was somebody that would always be out there battling with spirit, and that left foot of him was vicious. I saw some goals this morning on Sky Television, a combination of all his goals, and he struck some beautiful goals. And he also, it was his energy. He got from box to box, and he arrived late, and he gets side tap-ins with his right foot, and his headers were magnificent. And it was never acknowledged as a great player, but somebody you would always want in your team, whatever position he played.
I mean, it's unfathomable as to what's happened, but I haven't found anybody who's had even one single bad word to say about Gary Speed. So presumably, when you're drafting young players into the squad, you'd immediately attach them to Gary Speed, would you? And say, live your life like him, son, and you won't go far wrong. Well,
there's a fella called Robbie Savage that was in that role, and I said to him, just sit down, because the under-21s played the night before. I said, just sit down and watch him play against Germany. I identify, and he just covers the park. He was brilliant. And as a skipper, later on, I was to make him skipper once Barry Horn had moved aside. He was good, and he talked to me, and we'd talk, and we'd have phone calls. And in the last few months, I've been reciprocating that, because when he took over with the Welsh job, it was awkward, because he had tournaments, games in Ireland, and the results weren't going well for him. The press were getting on his back, and I know what that was like. And you know, I wasn't Welsh, and he is Welsh, and they were having a pop at him, and I was asking him to say, look, just be careful, monitor what you do, get your right backroom staff there. And then all of a sudden, he just fell into this system where Bale, Morrison and Bellamy came alive. They just exploded on the scene. And then he had his midfield players like Ramsey, and his centre-backs Williams and Hennessy, the goalkeeper. And they started to come along. And he's vetted them, he's seen them, and he knows what he wants in his team. And sadly, no longer will he manage them.
Bobby, this has undoubtedly affected everyone, and Mike touched on it in the beginning, whether it's heads of state, whether it's the ordinary man or woman in the street who maybe didn't even have an interest in football. This is something that's touched everyone's hearts, and everybody seems to be mourning.
It's not only that, it's gone worldwide though as well. You know, my son Jonathan is coaching Perth Glory out in Australia, and he's contacted me and he said, Dad, what's going on? And all of a sudden it's worldwide. You just can't believe as many people as it's affected. And I had a text this afternoon of a friend of mine that's got a restaurant up in Wrexham, and he said the people are coming in and they're so low spirited. He said, I cannot believe what we're seeing in Wales today.
It's just astonishing. Bobby, I want to thank you very much indeed for sparing the time to come and talk to us tonight on what's clearly been a very difficult day for yourself. And but nevertheless, you've given us some very fond memories of Gary Speed, and for that we're very grateful.
Thank you very much indeed, Mike. But I'd just like to say that I think now, once we've all grieved, then the supporting of the Speed family is essential for everybody, because
indeed,
two young boys there that won't have a father and won't see their father again.
Yeah, it doesn't bear thinking about Bobby, but you're very right to bring that up. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks,
Bobby Gould, ladies and gentlemen, the former manager of Wales, who made Gary Speed his skipper, and he led his nation with tremendous determination and pride, and eventually, of course, became the manager of that very nation, the job that Bobby Gould had done.